Kesubos Daf Ayin Dalid discusses the sugyas of a Tanai and a Mum, two reasons which may cancel a Kedushin, make it be void, never chal in the first place, a Tanai that was not fulfilled, and a Mum which was discovered. The Gemara will discuss both of those sugyas. So as far as Tanai, the Gemara has already been discussing B'chokes Rav and Shmuel. In a situation where somebody made a Tanai, the Tanai wasn't fulfilled, the Tanai on the Kedushin was not fulfilled, therefore the Kedushin should be canceled. But then he went ahead and he did a bia. He did an asuin as a bia. And the question is, did that bia, was that an effective kedushin and an asuin? Do we assume that he did not mean for that bia to be a bia as no? Since he went ahead and did something, must have shown that he was bol l'shem kedushin, even though he made a tanai that wasn't fulfilled. So Gemara has been wanting to say that there was no machokas in that case. The machokas is in the case where it's two different women. He made a tanai on one, and then on the other one he didn't make a tanai. All kinds of different discussions. The Gemara wants to say now that in a case where there's a simple tanai, there's no machlokes. So the Gemara brings some more Amorim will say that. So the Gemara says, Rav Acha bar Yaakov said, Rav Yochanan, in a case where he made a tanai, and the tanai was fulfilled, and then he did a bia, everybody agrees that a get is not required. The tanai is still valid, and even though he did a bia afterwards, it's not a kedushin. Now, Rav Acha bar Ravika asked a question. He was the nephew of Rav Acha bar Yaakov. He asked a question from a Sugin Yevamis. Sugin Yevamis talks about a chalitza which was a mistaken. It was done under false pretenses. And from this sugya, we see that if you do something after a tanai that's not fulfilled, there is at least one opinion that says that the kiddushin is, the maisa is valid and a get should be required. So what's the sugya? So we have over there, it says if somebody does a chalitza by mistake, it's kosher chalitza. So Gemara wants to know what's a chalitza by mistake? That's a kosher chalitza. So the Gemara says where they told him, if you do this chalitza, you'll end up being married to her, which is a total lie, but that's what they told him. And he did it under the assumption that it was a marriage. And so that's a kosher chalitza, it's a good chalitza anyway. So now Reish Lakish said that. Rav Yochanan said, how can you say that? I have a Mishnah where it says that if either of the two, the man or the woman, the Yavam and the Yavama, if either of them don't understand that this is a chalitza, it's puzzle. You want to tell me that here they told the guy straight out that this is going to be a marriage, and he therefore went ahead and did it? You want to tell me that's a kosher? For sure not. So what does it mean then? It means that it was a false tanai. A chalitza, which is a mistake, means that there was a false tanai. They told him, you can do chalitza and then she's going to give you 200 zuz. So he did the chalitza on the assumption he was getting 200 zuz out of it. And it was false. He never did. So the Gemara wants to say, so here you have the same case. He did an action. He went ahead and did a chalitza on the assumption that this was going to work. The tanai was no good. So we don't say that the fact that he went ahead with the chalitza and he continued afterwards shows that he was meichel the tanai. So what we see in that case is that since he went ahead and we call it a chalitza kshera, we assume that he was meichel the tanai. So that would seem to indicate if you do a maisa after a tanai that was not realized, then that cancels the tanai. So we should say the same thing over here. We should say that he did a maisa, he did a bia after a kiddushin that had a tanai on it, so that cancels the tanai. So the Gemara says that has nothing to do with anything. How could you compare the two? Over there, in the case of chalitza, the tanai was canceled. The tanai was invalid, actually. The tanai was never valid in the first place. It's not because his maisa that he did afterwards overrides the tanai and shows that he was meichelet. Because the tanai never had any shaykhis. Why? Because the whole sugi of tanai is learned out of the tanai made by the Bnei Gad and Bnei Reuven when they wanted the land on the other side of the Yarden. So any tanai that's going to work halachically has to be similar to their tanai. And their tanai was a tanai where you could do the action through a shliach. Here, the chalitza can't be done through a shliach, and therefore you can't make a tanai on a chalitza. Therefore, it's automatically void. Since it's void, the chalitza is a valid chalitza. The tanai is never really in existence. So the Gemara answers, what the other case was a bia. Bia you for sure can't do through shliach. So it should also be a void tanai. So why are we discussing this even? So Gemara says, no, you could make a tanai on a biat's kiddushin. And the reason is because all the three types of kiddushin are learned from each other. Their halachos are shared. There's a pasuk that brings them together. It says, kol avois are linked to each other. And since the other types of Kiddushin can work through a Shliach, therefore, though Bia can't work through a Shliach, at least a Tanai works in other types of Kiddushin, so it works on Kiddushay Bia as well. All right, now the Gemara brings more opinions on the topic. The Gemara brings Rav Ula bar Abba, in the name of Ula, in the name of Rabbi Elazar, says that somebody who does a mistaken Kiddushin that didn't work, and then he does a Bia, everybody agrees that he does require a get. It is valid. What are the types of mistaken bia? So first of all, he talks about mekadosh b'milveh. That's if where a lady owes somebody money, and he says, "I'm going to be mekadosh you by being meichel the loan." That doesn't count. You have to give her something. You can't. The money that he gave her as a loan, that's already hers from a while ago. It doesn't help to cancel that obligation. Also, if there was a Tanai, that's our case, if it was a Tanai that wasn't fulfilled. Or if we gave her less than a Shava Pruta. In all these cases, the Kedushin is possible. We did a Bia afterwards. So according to Rabbi Elazar, everybody agrees he does need a get. We are concerned that the later Kedushin was L'Shem, the later Bia was L'Shem Kedushin. Now, Rabbi Yosef bar Abbas and then Rabbi Menachem, in the name of Rabbi Ami, only in the case of a Pachas Mishava Pruto does he require a get. Because everybody knows that that was not a valid Kiddushin, and the Bia that he did afterwards, if he's doing a Bia now, he must have in mind that this is going to be Kiddushin. Otherwise, it would be a Bias Znus. However, the other types of mistakes, people don't know. They don't know that a Milva is not a good Kiddushin. They don't know about Tanai. They didn't know B'chal that Tanai wasn't fulfilled. And therefore, they did not have in mind that this Bia should be a Bia L'Shem Kiddushin. Next, the Mark quotes of Kahana in the name of Ula. There's someone who's mechadish on a Tanai, and then he does a Bia. He does require a get. And he says it was a case like this that happened. The Chachamim could not send the lady away without a get. And it's based on a Tana. As a Tana is Rabbi Yehuda named Shmuel, who brings in the name of Rabbi Shmuel. And there's a drasha. It says Vihila in Espasa. It says that a Saita is Chayev, she's Aser, to her husband because she wasn't forced. Now, if she would be forced, she'd be mutter. Says the Gemara, there's someone else that even though it says she's not forced, but there's someone else who, even if she was not forced, would be mutter. Only she, in the instance where she's not forced, is aser. But someone else would be mutter. Who's that someone else? Someone who had kiddushay ta'is. She was married, but the marriage was a mistake, and therefore, even though she's not forced, she's mizana without being against her will. It's no problem because the kiddushin is valid, even if she's carrying a son slung over her shoulder. The Gemara says she just could go, she could walk out of the marriage. The marriage is useless because the whole kiddushin was a mistake. The Gemara now moves on to discuss ways to take the neder off or mum off, as we had seen in our previous Mishnah. If a man marries a woman and she has either a neder on her or she has mumin that he was not aware of, if he made it tonight, or even if we know he was makbid without it, the kiddushin may be canceled, may be based on false pretenses, mekachtois, and it's as if it never happened. So the Gemara says, what happens if you can take off the nedarim or take off the mumin? How do you do that? If you go to a chacham, the chacham could be matir the neder, and if you go to a doctor, the doctor might be able to heal the mum. So we have a brisa that first says that there's a difference between the two. If a chacham could take off the neder, then shitaka is married. If a doctor can take off the mum, she's not married. So what's the difference? The difference is when a chacham takes off a neder, he makes it that it was never valid in the first place. Therefore, it comes out that at the time of the kiddushin, she really didn't have nedarim. Retroactively, she never had any nedarim on her. And therefore, the kiddushin is chal. However, the mum is only healed from now on. At the time of kiddushin, she did have a mum. And therefore, at the time of kiddushin, it was still false pretenses, and the kiddushin was never chal. Now, the Gemara has a kasha because there's a brisa that contradicts this. There's a brisa that contradicts the chachamim's opinion. There's a brisa that says that even a chacham does not work. It's not mikudeshes if a chacham is matir her. Still no good. So what's pshad? It's a contradiction in the chacham's opinion. So Gemara says these two chachamims, one is really Rabbi Meir and one is really Rabbi Elazar. And they have machlokes if this works. Rabbi Meir says a person does not intend for his wife to be embarrassed in court, going to look for a heter on a neder that she made, and therefore he never had in mind to be mekadosh her if there was a way to get the neder off. Rabbi Elazar says no, he doesn't care. If she could get the neder off, then he did have in mind for the kiddushin to work. And therefore, if she does go ahead and get the neder off, the kiddushin that he did previously is chal. The Gemara now brings another Mishnah, which is also based on this concept of whether or not a man minds for his wife to have to go to the Beis Din to be matur neder. It's a lengthy brisa or Mishnah, depending on the girsa you have. So it discusses why a certain list of divorces cannot be remarried. So the first is somebody who divorces his wife because she made a neder, so he's not allowed to remarry her. Second is somebody who divorces her because of a shame because of rumors of something bad that she did, is not allowed to remarry her. What's the reason? So Rashi says there are two reasons. One potential reason is that the guy might later claim that I didn't know that there's that it's not so bad. I didn't know that I could take the neder off by taking her to a chacham, or I didn't know that the shem ra is not true. So we're afraid that she's going to marry somebody else, and then he's going to come back and say it's not fair. I didn't know, and therefore I never really divorced her, and it wasn't valid. We don't want a situation like that, which would cause major problems. So therefore, we tell the guy, listen, you should know you're not going to be able to marry her. So therefore, if you are divorcing her, make sure you're very sure that this is what you want to do. Once we tell him that, he can no longer come with claims I didn't know, because we made it clear to him that he has to know. Now the next thing that we have here is Rabbi Yehuda, who says that a neder, well, so we first have to discuss the second reason. So the second reason that he can't remarry her because of, if he divorced her because of neder or because of shem ra, is that we don't want Bnei Yisrael to be prutzos with neder and shem ra. We want to make sure that they stay away from arayos and from nedarim. So we say, listen, if you're going to get divorced for these reasons, you're never going to be able to go back. It's going to be permanent. So now Rabbi Yehuda says that a neder that was made in public, you can't, if you divorced over that, you can't remarry. And he holds that the reason is because we want to keep them away from nedarim, and specifically we want to keep them away from nedarim that are made in public because those can't be mefer. Bar can only be mefer ones that are made in private. So it's more important to keep away from the ones that are made in public, which is no hafara, and therefore those are the ones that you can't be machzir. Now between Rabbi Meir and Rabbi Elazar, two opposite opinions as to could you remarry her? Could somebody remarry her after divorcing her because of a neder that the husband could be mefer, or only after a neder that the husband could not be mefer? Now there are certain nedarim that are meferable and certain that aren't. In order to be meferable, it has to affect the husband, or be something which is inui nefesh, which is a personal deprivation, which is uncomfortable. So the Gemara brings the two opinions. Rabbi Meir says that any neder which you require chachamim to take off, hataras chachamim, it can't be mefer, those you can't remarry. And the reason is because he knew that the divorce was complete, and he wanted to force her to go into the Beis Din. He was happy with that. He understands that the pshat, the reason that you can't remarry is because we want to make sure the guy doesn't have a claim afterwards. So a person is very happy to have his wife have to do hataras and nedarim, and therefore if it's a neder that the chacham could be matir, then he's going to come with a claim that if I would have known that the chacham could be matir, I would have been very happy for my wife to go get a heter, and therefore there'll be a problem. But as far as hafara, everybody knows he could be mefer. There's no claim that I didn't know that I could do hafara. Now Rabbi Elazar says the opposite. He says people will say I didn't know that I could do hafara. Chacham, I would never have sent her to. That's not. He'll never claim that because a man doesn't want his wife to have to go to a chacham. It's a bizayin. But he could still say I didn't know there's such a thing as hafara. So therefore, he says Rabbi Elazar says that the iser is only in a situation where they can't go to a chacham, he could be mefer. That's where there's a problem that's going to come out. He's going to say, I didn't know. Now, Rabbi Elazar does say that they also asked a case where you need to go to the chacham, gzeira atu, the case where he could be mefer it. And the Gemara asks, what's the reason of Rabbi Yehuda, who says that there has to be a minion there? So he learns out of the pasuk, in Yeshua, v'hikum ben Yisrael ki nishbu lahem nesi ha'eda b'Hashem l'kei Yisrael v'yiloinu kol ha'eda ha'nesim. By the Gevanim, that they promised them they weren't hit them, and so you see over there that they couldn't be mefer, they couldn't be matir, that neder that they had made to leave the Gevanim alone. Now over there it says that it was a rabbim. So Gemara says, what's a rabbim? So Gemara says a rabbim is three people. Nachman Yitzchak says Ram is three people because we have a pasuk in Vayikra talking about the Zav, the flow of the woman, and it says Yomim Rabim. So Yomim is plural, it must be 2 days, Rabim is more than that, it's 3 days. Then Rav Yitzchak says Rabim here means 10 people because we call it an Eidah. It says Nesieh Eidah. So therefore, that's the Rabim that was here that you cannot be matir the neder anymore.